Welcome to the Weights and Plates podcast. I am Robert Santana. I am your host, along with a special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself, or do you want me to do it?
Let's have you do it.
Well, let's hope I don't butcher your fucking name here. Today I have Hari Fafutis, who's a starting strength coach down in Mexico, Guadalajara. Is that right?
Correct.
And he also transcribed the starting strength text into Spanish, into Espanol. So welcome, Hari.
Gracias. Pleasure to be here with you.
De nada. I'm sure your Spanish is a lot better than my fucked up, butchered elementary level. So we're not going to do this interview in Spanish. But
well, that's why eventually you got to come down and visit so you practice your Spanish.
My grandmother would agree with you. I think I don't know if you know this, but I learned it when I was up until age of 5. Then I went to school and my vocabulary didn't extend past that. So I have an accent and all that shit, but my vocab is terrible. Even though I took Spanish in high school, I just kind of coasted because it was for Americans, so it was kind of easy.
Yeah, well, again, you got to start back into it and recover the language.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I need to pay you a visit. This is long overdue. I didn't mention in your intro, you're also a gym owner. I always forget the name of your gym, so you're going to have to tell the audience. I remember all this other shit about you, but I've never been to your gym, so it doesn't jump out at me. I know it starts with a T. Is that right?
Yeah, so the name of the gym is Stavros. That's Greek for bull, because my partner, his last name is Toro. Bull.
Get out of here.
And I have ancestors from Greece, so we thought it was like a good mix of a strong animal, his last name, and my roots, kind of like mixed it up. And now we are 8 or 9 years later.
Is that how long you've been open?
Yeah.
Damn.
Open for 8 years or 9.
So was it 2025? So you started in 15?
Yeah, 2015.
Damn. That's pretty cool, man. Well, I wanted to bring you on for a few reasons. We've had kind of a similar trajectory, and I think you have a lot to share here in terms of your training history, but I think maybe you should start by telling us, how you got into lifting, when you opened your gym and what kind of led to that. And then I really want to take a deep dive into the training journey that you had. Because it was quite similar to mine, although I would argue you took it a lot further, and we'll kind of get into that when the time comes. I've been waiting to do this one for a long time.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So I was always enthusiastic about training and fitness in general. Mm-hmm. I did sports when I was young, and then right in college, I tried to play basketball in Mexico in college, but I don't have the height for that sport, but I was stubborn and I wanted to make it to the team. I got redshirted for 6 months, and then I realized it wasn't for me. So I started looking for like some sort of physical activity to keep me as committed and engaged. And that's when I started lifting. I read some like fitness books on how to stay in shape, and it was more like bodybuilding stuff. And I started doing it. Got some results, and then eventually I injured my back trying to deadlift. I think it was back in college. I was like 20 years old, and I was pulling like 270, something like that. Popped the back, got really, really scared, and stopped lifting altogether for like a year because all of the doctors told me that I needed to stop training and lifting. And then I started swimming, and I had a lot of back pain, and I was getting very frustrated with it. So eventually I read I don't know how the book came about, but I read the Starting Strength book, and I decided to contact Rip personally, and I asked him if he could give me some sort of consultation to work up the back problem, and he was kind enough to receive me like in a summer. I think that was back in 2014. So I've tried, it was a year after having tried swimming and, all the physiotherapy, back movements to get better. Nothing worked. I was weak. I was I am 5'8", and I used to weigh back then 155. So literally the stereotype that Ripito likes to describes in his articles, that I was that guy, 155, 5'8".
Did you meet him in person or did you talk to him on the phone?
Yeah, no, I paid him a visit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I remember the day that Nick was there as well, and I was with one of my cousins, so we both came out, visited him, and I was like, Rip, but like my back hurts, this and that, and he's like, have you like read all the articles and stuff in the blog that I've posted? And I'm like, no. And he's like, do you have like a pair of shorts and just like change clothes and I'll teach you how to deadlift. You'll be fine. And so, yeah, there was me, 155, skinny kid, and Rip, he showed me how to deadlift. He coached me, and then he told me, you're fine. You see, like, your back didn't break. You're okay. Do the program and come back maybe in 6 months or let me know about your progress. Get strong, do the program. You'll be fine. And he was like the guy who gave me the assurance that I felt I needed to like start. If you want to call it, he gave me permission, and that's what I needed from like a authority that wasn't a doctor but was experienced in this area.
Did he tell you to gain 100 pounds?
Of course.
The first thing he said when he walked in.
Yeah, he's like, you have to gain weight. I remember he told me, get your press up to 100 pounds and your deadlift to 300. And I can almost guarantee you that your back pain is going to go away.
He's right.
He's right. I came in with a lot of open-mindedness to learn from him. And in my mind, I was like, okay, whatever he says, I'm just going to follow to 100%. So I came back, I did the program, 6 months in, no pain whatsoever, gained a lot of weight, maybe like 30 pounds. And I just fell in love with the process of getting stronger and seeing what my body was capable of doing. And that was how I started.
It's funny, man, because I had I knew that we had similar training trajectories, but I kind of ended up in that place, kind of on a similar path. When I finished high school, I think, how old are you?
I'm 32.
You're 32, so I'm 40, so I finished much earlier than you, so I was 2002, and I had swam. I was a competitive swimmer in high school, and when I got out, it was basically I'd gain weight between seasons, off season, I'd get a little chubby, but gain weight for me was like, 165 pounds and skinny fat,
Mm-hmm.
And when I graduated, I was like, well, I need to do something to stay active and productive, because I don't want to be coming out of shape sack of shit, and back around this time, a lot of health magazines were starting to circulate, in the 80s and 90s, it was a lot of bodybuilding. And then in the 2000s, you started seeing the popularity of health publications saying, you need to lift and do cardio and eat healthy, so that, because America's fat week and et cetera, and all those things. And then I stumbled upon Rip in 2013, so a year before you. So we kind of found him around the same time. And I just found the program. And like yourself, I consumed a lot of bodybuilding content. So I looked at it and I'm like, okay, well, just follow the program, not even paying attention to the fact that, what does a squat mean? What does a deadlift mean? What does a press mean? I'm like, oh, I know how to do this. I've done this before. I've done these exercises. And about 3 months into it, I tore my adductor, and I didn't visit Rip, but I put a post up on the Q&A in his forum. He had a message board. Some people that are listening may still view that. Some people may be young and don't know what that is, but we were on a message board, and I didn't expect him to personally answer because, he was all, back then I didn't realize that there's this whole social media, YouTube stardom thing, where anybody could become known by other people just merely by the click of a button. You post a video up and people see you, right? So I known that he had a program. I didn't know there was a book attached to it. And I went on his site and I posted up the video, and he basically said, yeah, all this is fucked up, go find yourself a coach. So, I went to a local guy, got tuned up, read the books, went to seminars, and even traveled to his gym a few times in 2014. Did you get to meet Fox when you were there?
No, I met Carmen, Rip, and Nick were there the first time I was there.
14, Fox was still training there, and he gave me a coaching session, and we just hung out, at the gym. He's a cool dude. Wow. This guy's a freak athlete. I think I may have mentioned him on here before. I'm going to get him on because I have another topic I want to cover with him, but he's got like a vertical jump in the high 30s. He played football when he was younger. I think when he was at Rip's gym, he was half-assed following the program, and he pulled and squatted around 6, pressed close to 3, and he was like at a body weight of 209 and lean. Just one of these freak athletes that we all hate, but he's a cool guy, and he knows he's not normal, so that makes him a halfway decent coach. I went there back then, and the rest was history. I met you, I think, in 2016 or 17. When did you get certified?
I think I got certified either 16 or 17, yeah.
Because I certified in the end of 14. My first conference was 2015, and then I went every year after that. I remember I met you when you were still under 200 pounds, because the second time I met you, you were unrecognizable from the first time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that sounds reasonable. That sounds logical.
So let's talk about that. So you gained 30 pounds as a novice, but then you didn't stop there. So
yeah, so I started 155, and probably I need to check my log, but in the first 6 months, I remember I got the LP all the way up to 405 squat, and probably was at 200 pounds when I squatted 405 the first time. And then I took it all the way up to 255 was my heaviest.
Damn.
Yeah.
So that's for the audience. When you say you squatted 405, that was 3 sets of 5, and you were squatting 3 times a week still?
Yes, I was squatting 3 times a week, but it was like it was at the end of the novice progression. That means I think I had like a heavy squat day, a light, and a volume day.
Yeah. So two heavy days a week, or were you already, that was intermediate at that point?
I think it was either 2 heavy days or intermediate, and I had like heavy, light, medium kind of distribution of the program. But it was like either at the end of LP or at the very start of intermediate training.
And how was your deadlift?
Around the same. Back then.
That's what I figured, and I talk about that a lot on the show. And this doesn't happen to everybody. I think it depends on how the person's built. But I find that when these guys really run the fucking hell out of the squat on the LP, it starts to interfere with their ability to deadlift sufficiently heavy. And I notice when we get into intermediate and you start pulling back the stress and not quite hammering yourself so much on the squat, the deadlift kind of wakes up and, it excels past the squat over time. Was that your experience?
Yeah, and I also think that the deadlift takes a little more time to get ahead of your squat when you're starting out. When you start out, it's like squat, deadlift about the same strength, and the longer you train, and once the programming gets like a smarter distribution as your ability to recover gets harder, then the deadlift catches up to where it needs to be, which is for most people maybe 10% more than your squat. And also the press and bench, once you start to train them more frequently, they also get proportionally stronger than at the beginning. So you don't look like a dinosaur, like the T-Rex, which is it's like people imagine. I have my current clients. I have like a couple of dudes. And, some of them are more responsive at the legs at the beginning. So they do start to look like T-Rexes.
Yeah.
And
it took me a second because I thought you were talking about T-Rex arms, but I see what you mean. No, that's, I've seen that happen so many times where these guys come in here, they got huge legs, a huge ass, and then like skinny arms and a gut.
Yeah. And they're like
a T-Rex.
I don't want to look like a T-Rex. I want bigger arms and I don't want like a fat ass. And I'm like, dude, you're just starting out. You're running the LP. You're squatting much more than, well, not much more, but your squatting frequency is higher than press or bench. So
Right.
once you get past LP and start intermediate, and if you do this for long enough, everything was going to be proportionate. But it's just at the beginning, it's normal to expect sometimes the T-Rex body, but then you're going to get rid of it as the longer you train correctly.
Oh, yeah. I used to have that problem when I was younger. I didn't press or deadlift really before starting strength. I hardly deadlifted. I had done the exercises in the past, but I hardly deadlifted. And at that point, I had been doing overhead work for about 2 to 3 years, but I would like alternate press with push press with dumbbell. But I'd say the first 12 years that I lifted weights, I did nothing overhead really. Occasionally maybe I'd do a dumbbell press for a couple months, but like I really didn't do anything overhead. And the deadlift would appear and reappear on and off. So when I started NLP, and this kind of speaks to what you said about having comparable strength on both the squat and the deadlift, I had a 315-pound squat when I started my first run at NLP for a single. It was deep. I have videos on Facebook. The form wasn't great, but it would have passed in a meet is what I mean. But my deadlift was the same because I hardly deadlifted. So I had all this lower body training on the squat, my quads and possibly my adductors. But like I had never really pushed my posterior chain like that. So in order for me to get that deadlift, the injury was a silver lining because in order for my deadlift to go up on the NLP, my squat was basically in rehab mode and I was able to push the deadlift. So I ended up getting my deadlift up over, I think I was pulling 405 for a set of 5 and my squat was 335 for a set of 5. The issue I had with the squat was I never missed, and I probably, if I had someone like myself or you coaching me at the time, I think I could have went further, but I would start hurting when it would get heavy because my technique would change, and I had nobody riding my ass to fix that. So at the end, I just said, fuck it. I'm not going to, I didn't go to the light day. I didn't go to heavy, light, medium. I just kind of got off of it, hired a coach that overcomplicated my programming, but got me out of pain, and hard to tell where I would have went with a light day, but I didn't really deadlift and I didn't really press. I benched a lot, and I think I had a couple of years of overhead work going into it. And that would always happen. I'd gain weight and I'd get the T-Rex body. And for me, it was just I wasn't micro-loading and I wasn't training overhead. So once I started doing those two things, taking the smaller jumps and focusing on the press more, my shoulders filled out, my arms filled out a little bit. And, everything pretty much evens out if you do the program. The things that we typically see, and I'm sure you've seen this probably more online because in person this tends to not happen since we run our gyms, the way we do. But people try to go up by 5 pounds on the press, go up by 5 pounds on the bench. They won't really up their deadlift in the beginning. Like in my case, my squat was pretty strong. My deadlift was not. But in a lot of cases, these guys haven't done either of the lifts, but the deadlift feels heavy first, because it's stuck to the ground. So these guys, and we've talked about this, you've seen it, you've experienced it. They think they're like, oh shit, that was so heavy. And you watch it and you're like, you could have done 5 more reps, bro. And they just don't know how to push. So then they'll like make 5-pound jumps at like 235, Meanwhile, their squat's going up to 300. And I see that happen quite a bit. That's the opposite problem you see on the press and the bench press where they're making big jumps. They start making small jumps on the deadlift, drop the frequency early, then they become squat specialists. Have you seen this phenomenon?
Oh, yeah. But it's like either you become a squat specialist or a deadlift specialist. It's also the case. Like people who don't want to squat and they just do deadlifts, or like the gym bros who just do bench press, And it goes back to where we began, which is if you do this for long enough in a smart way, your body's going to be thoroughly trained, every corner of your body, every muscle, and you're going to look like you train in every part of your body.
Everything evens out in the end. I don't know what your experience has been, but I know that if I focus more on the bench press, my arms get bigger. And if I focus more on the press, my shoulders get a little bit bigger. At this point, everything's growing slow because I've been doing it for so long. And I'm sure you kind of experienced the same thing because you've been doing it for so long. The one thing that I did notice is that unless I do heavy rows or curls, my biceps aren't doing anything. And that's just me. I can't say that for everybody, but what's been your experience with that? You training or training others. Sometimes certain things need a little bit of extra, depending on how the person's built, I would imagine. Because some guys say, "Oh, I do chins and they grow." I've been doing chins since high school, man. It was a staple in swimming workout, and it didn't do shit for my. I mean, they grew a little bit, but the only time I really saw them fill out was when I did heavy rows and curls.
That's interesting, because I was actually going to bring up the chin-ups. Mm-hmm. Like, after 10 years of coaching and owning a gym, I've concluded that the chin-up for me is just as important as the other four main lifts. Yeah, I
100%
at the same level, because and I think also Rip concluded that not too long ago. I know in the book he mentions it, but it's just like peripherically compared to the lifts. And in one of the videos later, he was talking about mentally speaking, approaching strength training in a way where you think about movement patterns, and he categorizes, roughly speaking, that the human body can pull stuff from the floor, you can push something like away from you, you can press something up, you can squat, and then he said, but you can also, and you should be able to pull with your arms towards you. You should be able to do that. And the chin up is the movement that allows you to train that strength aspect of your body. I do think, like, the more I train it, the more I think it's important. And in my personal experience, the chin up is probably the one exercise that was filling up the whole of, like, training your arms, your biceps. It's funny that it doesn't stimulate your arms as much, but
not as much. I don't know if that's, I started doing them in high school because we swam. So my first year we did lat pull downs with a wide grip behind the neck. And then we swam lots and lots of laps. Like, we did 1 million yards a season. And the lats got stronger from that, because kind of like cycling, makes these cyclists, it makes their quads bigger, their calves bigger. Swimming makes your lats bigger, fills out your triceps too, to an extent. So by my second year, I was pulling myself up. By my third year, I can do them with any grip, wide grip, narrow grip, underhand grip. And a few years back, I pushed them. I maxed the lift out, and I'm going to come back to what you said about it being a main lift. I maxed it out. I think I did a combined weight of 300 pounds with my body weight, the belt, the plates. I did 300 pounds. And I think that, like, I'm just very good at using my lats to pull myself up. I don't really get a lot of arm work out of it. I've never had my grip fail on those, but I learned 2 years ago that my grip was the limiting factor on rows and on curls as well, because I started doing, those hand grippers they sell, Iron Mind?
Yeah.
I did the Captain to Crush grippers. I started running those up, and all of a sudden my curls got easier, my rows got easier. I can hold heavier dumbbells and shrug. And I figured out that my hands, for whatever reason, if I'm pulling something without necessarily using my lats, I guess, as much, through full range of motion, I should say, they're weak. Like, I used to have trouble holding groceries. Like, no matter how strong I got at squat, press, bench press, deadlift, pull-ups, holding things for long periods of time was very fatiguing, until I got my grip stronger and started doing those exercises. Now it's a non-issue. I can hold anything. So I don't really know how to explain that, because I can hang from a bar with my arms overhead with a bunch of weight, and no problem. My hands hold on. But if I have to pick something up off the floor like that, other than a deadlift, deadlift, no problem. Never failed on a grip on a deadlift, which also makes it strange. But if I have to, like, bend my elbow and hold something that way, because your forearms also participate in elbow flexion. Whatever muscles of the forearm participate in elbow flexion, they were fucking weak. And working those grippers fixed a lot of it. But I just never got anything out of full range of motion overhead pulls, chin-ups, pull-ups, etc. The neutral grip I like, because now you engage the brachialis a little bit more. So I felt like I got something out of that, but just standard supine medium grip, chin-ups and pull-downs, I didn't see much happen. And I figured this out probably 3 years ago. I modified a program Andy Baker wrote that was an arm program, and it was basically a lot of bench, rows, shrugs, and curls, and not a ton of curls, surprisingly. They were in there. And I just filled out really quick on the front of my arms. I've never had a problem getting my triceps bigger. If I bench a lot and do a little bit I don't even have to do tricep work. If I bench a lot, they just fill out. But doing a lot of chin-ups and heavy chin-ups, never really did it. But I remember when he did his program, I was doing cable rows. I was doing neutral grip pull downs. There was a couple bicep curl exercises there, barbell rows. There was a lot of rowing and a lot of curling. And then he did the shrug so that you would be holding heavy dumbbells. I think that was the point because they were supposed to be done without straps. And it worked, but I don't know. I never really got it out of the chin-ups. I think I've just always been very good at using my lats, and maybe it's my arm dimensions. I have long arms. Most of my length is in my forearms. So I have fucking grasshopper arms, But I don't have a good explanation for it. But to your point, I would agree 100% that it's the fifth lift. I think it's more important than the power clean. And my reason being that if the press is a main lift, then the chin-up's a main lift, because the press is an overhead push. You extend the elbow, you flex the shoulders through full range of motion. When you do a chin-up, you flex the elbow and you extend the shoulders through full range of motion. So how can a press be a main lift, but a chin-up not be a main lift? See what I mean? So that's what I always tell people. I rank the chin-up or the pull-down higher than I would the power clean.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
If the press is a main lift, the chin-up's a main lift, or the pull-down.
Yes, absolutely. Now, interesting that you mentioned the rows, barbell rows, as also staple for the biceps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reasoning that you probably do supine grip rows, or not.
I do them prone. I'm not a fan of using barbell rows for arms, because what I've heard is when you do supine, it fucks with your elbows.
Yeah.
So I like the neutral grip personally. I've done them with a trap bar, which is kind of cool. But typically I like them with a cable or a dumbbell personally, because then I can keep the palms facing each other. People don't know this, but a lot of people don't know this. You probably know this, that brachialis is your strongest elbow flexor. So when you do a prone grip or a neutral grip, you're hitting that muscle more, and that just fills your whole arm out,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like neutral grip type rowing. I do barbell rows. I think they're great, as deadlift assistants. I don't think they're a great arm builder because they start to bother the elbows when you start turning the hands. I played around with a trap bar once. I never ran it up, so I have no opinion, because I was trying to replicate what the dumbbell accomplishes with a barbell, I like dumbbell rows and croc rows a lot, and I like cable with a neutral grip personally. I don't like doing supine grip rowing, because the thing about what is a row? A row is a partial. It's basically a partial around the shoulder, because your shoulder's halfway through extension, versus a chin-up, you start in full flexion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're removing the lats from the equation by shortening them, right? So now your arms and your forearms have to take the brunt of the load at this point, and that's why it could be a good arm builder. But I think when you're doing a whole body exercise like a barbell row with no freedom to move your hands around or supinate, it just pisses off the elbows. I think it's too much load.
Yeah.
Has that been your experience?
Not personally. For some reason, I've been lucky to preserve my elbows like at 100% healthy. And I've always been able to do like supine rows, lots of chin-ups, on top of that jiu-jitsu, and I'm good. So
that's awesome. I don't know if I'd get it or not. I've gotten tendonitis from benching, so I'd imagine if I did the other range of motion, maybe I would. I don't know. I should try it, because other types of rows have been very helpful in building my arms, and I'm sure it would work as long as I don't piss my elbows off. But did you get what I was getting at there, though? When you shorten the lat, now your arm muscles have to do more of the work.
Oh yeah.
Versus your back. Yeah.
It's like saying you're halfway through the chin up, and now that's where the arms take over the movement and not the lats.
Yep. And that's why I laugh at these bodybuilders, man. They're like, if you just do the row this specific way, it's a great lat builder. And I'm like, it's a partial,
Yeah.
At least they talk out of both sides of their mouth because they sit there and, they jerk themselves off over the stretch. You got to get stretch mediated hypertrophy, and all this bullshit. Well, the stretch happens at the top of a chin up or the top of a pull down. When you're in a row, you're shortened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you go ahead.
No, I was going to say that you're right. But the row is also like a really good exercise. I would not place it at the level of the chin up and or the press or the other lifts, but it's close.
It's close. Yeah, and Rip talks about that in the book. It's a good intermediate exercise once you've been doing this for a while. It doesn't have to, that's a whole nother topic. I've done several videos on this. It doesn't have to be super fucking strict where only your arms and your shoulders move. It's a compound exercise, and I think it's functional because sometimes you have to pick things up off the floor, and you're not going to do that with a strict row. You're going to use your hips and knees too to get it up, and that's also why these people that like to pussy out and not do their fucking cleans, I also argue that a clean is functional because you have to hoist things up from the floor to chest level sometimes, and you have to know how to, what do the weightlifters call it? Engage that triple extension, where you're using your hips and knees and ankles to hoist weight up. So I think it's very important to know how to hoist up weight safely. And I learned that when I was moving out of a 3-bedroom house, and I had to pick a lot of things up. And in doing that, I realized I'm pretty good at using my hips, and I learned how to do that through the Olympic lifts. So, the row and the power clean and those things are very useful.
Yes, I agree. Even though I'm not sure I would place the clean as a priority relative to the other lifts. Like, I feel like it's also slightly lower than the main lifts. Mm-hmm. I still train them. But this is an interesting data point in my training. Right. When I was doing LP and I did train the power cleans, I remember I got them all the way up to like 230, 235 for sets of 3.
That's pretty good, man.
Yeah, but I was 200 pounds and then gained a bunch of weight, and the power clean stayed relatively at those same loads. I think my PR is like 260 maybe for a single. I'm my heaviest, and then now that I lost weight and I'm at 180, I can still power clean 230 to 235. I did at Rip's gym back in December. I think I did 242 power clean.
Nice.
So you cannot train them as you can the other lifts. It's just like I use them to maybe think that I am retaining my explosive power or reminding my body to stay explosive. But I don't feel like there's much gain anymore in training them.
No, I would agree. If you want to clean the most weight you could ever clean, now you're getting into Olympic weightlifting, and it's become sport and specialization. I don't train them at all. But I did, like you said, years ago. And a lot of novices want to skip them because they're limited more by technique. So you arguably don't get as much training intensity from them as you would from a deadlift variant, which could limit your ability to deadlift heavier. I understand that argument. But I think the technical execution is useful because you have to move like that out in the world. And if we're just talking about functionality and functional strength, that's my argument for it. I think I think being able to use the hips to hoist weight up and catch it is useful because you pick something heavy up off the floor that you got to carry and walk across a parking lot or whatever. You're not going to do that strict. It's not going to be strict and static. You have to know how to basically use body English to get it up. And the Olympic lifts taught me how to do that. Now I don't have to sit there and go become a weightlifter, but I got my clean into the mid 200s as well. And if I have to pick something up, I know how to keep my back in extension, and I know how to hoist the weight up safely because of that. That's what I was saying.
No, I see what you mean. Yeah. Under that context, I agree. If you're training for strength and you've never done power cleans, then I think it's a good idea to at least learn the skill so you can learn how to hoist weights, as you say. Mm-hmm. But know in advance that it's not gonna you're not gonna you're not gonna slam dunk playing basketball. Like
No,
it's not gonna get you there.
no, it's good for teaching you how to use momentum to move weight around, which
Right.
you're going to have to do at some point. So let's dive into this, because this is what I really wanted to get you on here for, the topic of weight gain.
Okay.
We get a lot. You were one of those guys that needed to gain it. I've worked with a lot of these guys. You've worked with a lot of these guys, and there's always this reluctance, and I talk about this on the show a lot, to gain body fat. And Rip will say, gain the fat now, lose it later. It's easier to lose fat than build muscle and get strong. That's true. I agree with that. I've gained weight myself. I'm heavy right now myself. I'm 208, which is for me a lot. So we're all kind of on the same page there. I think the thing that kind of gets glossed over, and in part because it doesn't make for a good business model, is that you're going to gain enough body fat to be uncomfortable. And I've talked about this at length with you and other people. We always get these guys that'll sit there and they'll point out a lightweight lifter or a bodybuilder that's strong, right? And I have one here, the episode that is going to come out before this one. So by the time this releases, it'll have been 2 weeks before. I interviewed a weightlifting coach. He trains in the 73 kilogram class. He's about 5'6". He's 165 pounds, and he's 9% body fat. And what we talked about in that episode was how he has to eat 3,000 calories to stay there, whereas most of the people that come to us have to starve themselves to get there, right? To get to 9% body fat. This guy can't keep the weight on because he's got a 36-inch vertical jump. He's a natural athlete, and he's just naturally lean despite the fact that he eats a lot, right? But what he'll tell you is that he's in a club sport. And, we covered this, but I'll kind of review here. He's in a club sport, and his goal is not to lift the most weight possible or gain the most muscle possible. His goal is to break records and win medals. And because of that, he has to stay at a weight that allows him to do that. If he goes up a weight class, he's probably not even going to be in the top 5. And we went through this, right? So what he'll tell you is that all his joints hurt. Everything feels like shit because that's sport. That's competition, right? Mm-hmm. And there comes a certain point here, and that guy, he's breaking national and world records as a masters lifter. But there comes a point here. We get a lot of people that are in the middle of the bell curve, or probably below, people that we call motor morons, and they might have to do some version of that to get a mediocre result. So that's one thing that I like to explain. The second thing is, just when someone's lean, that doesn't mean that they feel great. Like I said, this guy has all sorts of pain. And a lot of it, you and I probably know this, is because he's training at a very high level and he's very lean. And he acknowledged, he's like, if I got fat and just started training more, I'd feel a lot better in terms of joints, but then it's harder to breathe, right? And all of this kind of ties into the fact that when you're a novice, everything kind of happens fast and steady. You're adding 5 pounds a workout, 15 pounds a week on the squat, maybe 30 pounds a week on the deadlift for a while. This might go on for 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 months, depending on whether you're a young man, an old man, good joints, bad joints. Somewhere in the first year, that's going to end. And then at that point, if you're not satisfied with where the number is, if you're not satisfied with how you progress as a novice, well, now you've become an athlete of some sort. And there's different levels of that. As I covered in my previous episode, there's, you could be a recreational athlete. Like, that's what I would consider myself. I don't compete in meets. I don't chase medals. I don't chase records, but I chase numbers, which means that I am lifting to get from point A to point B. I am training, right? So I am an athlete in that regard, but it's recreational because I don't have deadlines. I can just keep going, right? Then you have somebody who's in a club sport, like my friend. He has deadlines. He has meets that he has to go to qualify, etc. He has records he's trying to break. He has medals he's trying to win. That's another level, right? And then you got pros, right? You got pro athletes. So I bring that up because once you have decided that, hey, I want to get a lot stronger than what my newbie gains or my novice linear progression provides, you've now committed to a higher level of risk. And then if you go into club or pro sports, now that risk gets even higher. So When we say gain weight, yes, we mean fat and muscle. And sometimes the amount of body fat you gain is going to make you uncomfortable. There are trade-offs to that. I've done it. You've done it. I've talked about me many times on this episode, but I want to hear about you because you took it even further than me. And you went further than me as well. You got a lot stronger than I did. So I think that this will be good for the audience to hear. And, in this show, I like to touch on the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't like to gloss over things, So if you're doing something and there's a negative trade-off, we need to talk about that because people need to understand this shit. They're not going to get in the gym and lift weights, gain a little bit of body fat, and be lean the whole time. Because I think that's the perception a lot of men have, is that they're just going to come in here, okay, I can gain some fat, but I'm not going to become a fat guy. Well, a fat guy is typically stronger than a skinny guy by virtue of being fat, even if his training program is bullshit. We've all seen this. So I'm going to hand that off to you.
Okay. Well, so I guess that what you're trying to make me talk about is what the experience of gaining weight is and all of the trade-offs that you are considering when you aim for that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And talk about the good first,
Okay.
Explain to people what happens. Why is it good to gain weight?
Okay. Before I talk about the good, I'm going to talk about my motivation behind it because I did have a goal like you did, which is you're trying to drive up the numbers. In my case, my all-time ambition was to squat 300 kilograms. Why? Because my dad told me that's what he squatted. He played football 15 years. And we don't have a video, but he's promised many times, and I believe him. So I wanted to be at least as strong as him. And that was my all-time goal. I trained first to rehab my back, and then because I really liked the process of getting stronger, and I just wanted to see if I could get to 300 kg squat. So when I started, I was very motivated. I followed everything by the book, and I did get very, very strong. Again, my squat went up in I think I started at 115 my first day, my first squat. And after 6 months, 405. I think after another 6 months, 500. And then here's the interesting part. When I got all the way to 500 pounds, yes, it was a very fulfilling process. You gain weight, the numbers go up, you lift more weight, you enjoy the process. And I didn't really care about my appearance in that moment. My vision was the squat, the 300 kg squat. And I did gain some fat, around a little bit of belly, this and that. I never thought I was too fat. Mm-hmm. And then I continued training, and I started competing. Like I said before, in terms of balanced development of muscles, since I trained everything balanced, 2 presses per week, 2 bench presses per week. I think I was doing 2 squats, 2 deadlifts. Everything went up smoothly, and slowly I started to gain weight from, I think I was probably in the 220s, and then over the years got all the way up to 250. And the interesting part is I got to a point where my squat got stuck in the 555. That's the most I've squatted. And the reason I wanted to gain weight was, first thing is the squat. Second is I just wanted to see where my limits were. And probably I'm not going to say that I untapped all of my genetic potential.
Oh, of course not. You're still a young man.
but I probably was close, I did everything I could in terms of resources and tactics and programming and technique. I was 250. I did very advanced programs, 3 months of block programming, stuff like that. And my squat got stuck for 2-3 years at 550. And that's where I thought, gained a lot of weight, it was a very satisfying experiment, but I don't think I can go like, if I continue training like this, what's my squat gonna be in 2 years, 3 years? Maybe 50 more pounds, like 600.
Mm-hmm.
That's still way off from what I wanted, which is 666, I think, something like that. The 300 kg, 660.
Yeah.
So that's where I started reckoning, like, well, when we started, the trade-offs. There's a point where the trade-offs don't make sense anymore, because a pound that you gain in your squat is going to cost you much, 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 much more than what it used to cost you 6 months earlier or a year earlier, or when you were a novice. So that was one thing. And then the other thing is, my mentor and coach told me, and you know, he was a strong man. He was quite big, strong.
Mm-hmm.
He told me, if I did one mistake, was I stayed too heavy too long. And I don't want you to do that. I think now is your time. You're young, and your skin, because that's another thing to consider, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your skin can still adapt as you shrink again,
mm-hmm.
and not have like loose bits and pieces of that. So I would recommend that you start losing weight slowly, and you're going to enjoy the process, and you're going to like the end product of your body. Like, after having accumulated what I call the muscle savings account, because like, man, I'm telling you, something happens when you get your deadlift up to 600 pounds and then you lose weight. I do feel like there's infrastructural changes that remain permanently. I have a huge back still.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like I couldn't have gotten that back, or the physique that I have. I'm not saying I'm like a professional bodybuilder or anything, but I'm quite satisfied with what I have. And most of that, I think, comes from having gone like that far with my body weight and muscle accumulation to only like shrink again. But I've retained a lot. And in concluding the trade-offs, I lost 70 to 80 pounds, because right now I'm 180. So I was 250, came back down to 180. And my squat came down from 555 to 470. My deadlift from 635 to 555. I just pressed 225. So if we try to like do the calculations, I probably lost 20% of my strength, but I lost maybe a little bit more of my body weight.
Mm-hmm. What'd you lose, like 70 pounds?
I lost 70 pounds. So 250 to 180. Yeah. How much is that in terms of percentages?
Let's see, 70 over 250. 28%.
Right. So I lost more weight, but in terms of percentages, I retained like 80% of the strength.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's a good trade-off, you know? And actually, Rip told me the same. When he saw me the first time I lost weight, I explained him this, that I got stuck at 555 and probably there wasn't much more to explore. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, yeah, that's a shame, you know, but it is what it is. Like,
yeah.
And I'm pleased with it. I saw what I needed to see in that experiment.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I wanted you to talk about, because, you know, I've done this a few times, and this last time I was open to going heavier. I'm 208, and in the past I've went between 190 and 160, and in the last couple times I couldn't quite get under 170. This time I got to 208, and I lose a little bit of strength, mostly in the bench press. But what I've noticed is there are two things happening. You're gaining muscle and you're getting stronger, obviously, but then you're also moving weight a lot easier. You're able to move more weight. Have you noticed that simply having a smaller body, even though a lot of that's coming from losing body fat, changes the mechanics of these lifts?
Oh, absolutely, man. I think especially on the press, when I was 250, I was pressing 300. I was doing like regularly over 250 every week.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, man, when you unrack the bar being that heavy, it just feels so good. Like you have all this support of the big mass at the arms, the shoulders, the chest, the back. And now that I'm like a little skinny bitch at 180, you just feel like it's a whole operation to unrack 225.
So
like, everything needs to be perfect. The bracing, the grip. Whereas when I was 250, like you just felt so much better.
We get people that either follow me on my Instagram page or listen to the podcast, and you get these little trolls that'll come on here and say, "Oh, you weren't 250 and lean. That would require steroids." This was all drug free, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. We talked about it beforehand. I'm just putting it out there for the audience. I already knew that, but the next thing that you're going to see from a troll is, well, he wasn't lean. Well, why does he have to be, right? That's the thing that I've been asking these people. Your goal was to squat 660, and people like to pretend that the gain in body fat doesn't play a role in this shit, and it absolutely does. Like you said, it changes your center of mass entirely, and moving weight's a lot easier when you just have more overall size. Now, you have to gain muscle, obviously. That's what's driving most of it, but there are leverage changes that take place, kind of like, when we talk in the seminar about the cheater pipe and the wrench, it's the same kind of deal. Your leverage changes when you put on more body fat. So some of that weight that's come off the bar simply has come off the bar because everything's different now. It's not that you lost a ton of muscle mass. You probably lost some because you lost body weight. You always lose some. But the loss of body fat changes the way all of that feels and how you can move that weight. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The physics of executing the lifts feel different when you are at a much heavier body weight.
Mm-hmm. And there's something about it, and we can't really explain all of it because it's just one of those things that's hard to measure. But when you do that, when you get that big, that's, and when I say that big, what would you say you were? 25% body fat, probably?
Probably. I mean, you've seen the pictures. You probably know better than me.
That's what I would guess. I don't think
25.
you touched 30, maybe 26, 27 at the most, not 30. I wouldn't say 30. Mid-20s, let's just call it that. And now you're what, 12?
Probably 12. 12, yeah.
Yeah, so when you get that large and you're lifting and adding weight and eating, and you're releasing more insulin, which again is the most anabolic hormone in the human body, and then you lose the weight. There's something about that you put on. I would argue, and people have argued this for decades. The quote unquote exercise science people try to say that this has been debunked. It has not been debunked because you can't debunk this in a lab. But I would argue that you're not going to be able to gain that much muscle mass staying lean and trying to do the whole lean gains thing.
Oh yeah, I actually wanted to bring that up. Yeah. Cool that you mentioned it. So because from your perspective as a nutritionist, this is gonna be cool to bring up to your audience, and it's like my own personal dilemma that I have, because when my clients come in and they look at me now and they don't know my training history, they think that it is impossible to achieve the physique that I have achieved. And in part, I think that's true, but not because I have like special genetics, but maybe like what we're ruminating on right now, maybe it's just a fact that this process of shooting up to 250, driving up to your strength limits to then come back down, may be the most effective way to transform your physique, aesthetically speaking, in the long term. Because like the other route is you do what the scientists recommend, which is you do like the little cycles of bulk and then cut, bulk and then cut, right? So right now I weigh 180. If I had started like when I was 155, and I do these little cycles of shoot up to like 165, come back down to 160, then repeat until I get to 180. man, I don't like, my intuition tells me that it would not have been the same result that I've gotten. But I don't know, what's your thoughts?
I don't think he would not be pressing 225 right now.
Right?
I don't think so. For one, it takes a long time to build muscle. So these little 3-month cut bulk cycles make no sense when you consider the physiology. You need to bulk to whatever weight that may be, and you need to stay there for a period of time so that you can allow yourself enough time to progress, adapt, and grow. So that's number one. These 3-month things, that's just the length of an academic semester so the guy can get a publication and get promoted and get tenure. That's just not grounded in reality. We all acknowledge, whether you're in academia or out in gyms in the field, that muscle takes a long time to build. So why would you cut yourself short when you're just starting to build muscle, right? Makes no sense. So for one, you got to stay anabolic for a longer period of time. Two, again, it's the leverage thing. There's something about having all that size, and I'm sure there's a hormonal response involved too, that allows you to lift more. And that nervous system adaptation that happens, you get used to handling these big poundages. I don't think that goes away either, you know? I've seen this on a smaller scale than you. I've went up around 200, give or take, several times. Every time I cut down, I'm lighter and I'm stronger. So, I pulled 500 for the first time when I was 175, I've squatted 440 at about 180 pounds. I pressed 225 at about 180 pounds. But I didn't do that with 10-pound cycles. I was gaining 30 or 40 pounds. It didn't occur to me that I should have went further. If I was in my 20s and, was talking to you and had your data at the time, I would have done it. I thought it just seemed too heavy for me. I wasn't in that environment. I wasn't in that environment. And the first time I tried to gain weight, when I got in that environment, I got to 205, and I wasn't that strong because I was working with an incompetent coach. But if I did what you did and had access to that information, I would have fucking went to 240 back then easily. But now it's a lot rougher on a 40-year-old body, and I'm not even that old. I can probably get away with it, but there's definitely differences, I feel, even at 208. So I'm thinking, hey, another fucking, 42 pounds? I don't know about this,
No, I think that's a really good point you bring, because most people don't see this long-term project. They're like, I want to look good in 6 months for my wedding or for my trip with my friend, whatever, But I was looking at it from, no. This is a long-term process, and I want to make it as effective as possible because I want the end result to be the best that I can achieve. So it needs to be like, well, that's what I did, and it worked. 5, 6, 7 year perma bulk, and then you slowly cut back down in weight. You go slow, so you try to preserve the muscle mass. So I get it. When people see me, they're like, dude, it's impossible. Like, I'm gonna do this I don't want this in 8 years. I want the results now. So the question is, are you guys willing to sacrifice the things that I've sacrificed? Like, yeah, you're gonna look chubby for a while, and you're gonna you want to be okay with that if you want the best end result possible. And I don't think too many guys are willing to undergo such a training process.
No, fuck no. It's an athlete's approach, and it makes sense. You were in sports. Your father was in sports. I was in sports. My father was in sports. And when you do something like what we're describing, you're now getting into sport, even though you're not in a league or a club. It's no longer about health. You obviously want to stay as healthy as you can doing it, but you're taking a higher level of risk. That's what I try to throw at people, because they'll say, oh, you're just so unhealthy because you're getting fat and this, that, and the other. Well, you've now gotten into post-novice training. You've decided to specialize in a physical activity that progresses over time. You're an athlete now. Athletics are not healthy, people. There's this misunderstanding that athletics are healthy. They're not healthy. Whether you're a lightweight or a heavyweight, you're putting your body through absolute hell. And if you talk to a competitive athlete, they're going to tell you they feel like shit. They feel like shit all the time.
Yeah.
The big ones can't breathe. The small ones hurt all the time,
Yeah.
That's just, that's oversimplification. Of course, there's other things present, but at this point, you're taking some risk with your body because you want it that bad. You don't have to want it that bad, people, but don't pretend that it doesn't work. That's kind of what I try to tell people. Yeah, this works, but you're not going to feel great. You're going to have problems breathing in a lot of cases. Big guys have problems breathing, even the conditioned ones. Talk to strongmen. They'll tell you they're very conditioned, but all that size makes it harder to breathe. The skinny guys, they're pounding on their joints. They don't have a lot of fat stored in between them. Everything hurts. So you have to understand something. When you're not genetically gifted for strength and muscle mass, you're going to have to take athlete level risk to get a mediocre result. And that's the bitch of it all.
Right.
If you're not one of these guys that's naturally ripped, fast, lean, and muscular, and you know who you are, those guys aren't listening to me. They're in there doing their thing because they don't have to think about what they're doing. But if you're a hard gainer, let's just use that word because it's familiar, you're going to have to take risk, push yourself, dedicate years to get to where the natural athlete is at baseline. So, 180, 12% body fat, that's pretty damn good for someone who's 5'8" and not on drugs. A lot of these people, I think part of the problem is with these, you're going to look good in 6 months is, if you're a Hollywood actor, you're taking drugs. If you're an athlete, you're taking drugs, and if you take drugs and fuck off in the gym, you're going to see muscle gain. That's drugs working. But if you want to go in there and do it the old fashioned way, you're looking at years, you're looking at potential injuries, you're looking at feeling like shit if you do have to gain weight to do it. There's a lot that goes into that. That's why it's not recommended that older people do something like this. If you're 40, 50, 60,
Right.
I ain't going to tell a 65-year-old to get to 250 and give himself diabetes. I'm not going to do that. But if you're under 35, it's probably fine. 35 to 45, it depends on the person. I don't like the way I feel right now, but I know I don't have diabetes or high blood pressure from it. I haven't done it for that long. But this may be the last time I do this. So I may go up a little bit more. We'll see. I don't think so. I think this is the end of the line for me. But in my 20s, if I had this information, I would have done it. If you said, hey, dude, your problem is 205 is not heavy enough, go to 250 and do it this way, get off this bullshit program, I would have been like, fuck yeah, Hari, I'll do it.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, that would be like my message to your audience. And that's what I tell all my kids at the gym. Like, are we aiming for physical excellence or just mediocrity? So if you want physical excellence, do the work, get under the bar, get heavier, get strong. And once you pay your dues, trying to get to your potential, once you've seen that panorama and you're like, okay, I think I paid my dues, I went too heavy for long enough, I think now it's the time to cut back down. After years of training, after years of paying your dues, then you have my permission to cut.
You have this permission, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's a good message. And I think we hammered the hell out of this topic, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it was good.
All right. Well, I'd love to have you back because I think you and I can go on and on and on about a lot of different shit. Yes.
Yeah. Well, maybe next time it's over here in my studio when you come and visit, and we can shoot.
I'm down, man.
Many stuff, many different topics, nutrition, training.
Yeah. Let's cut some promos too.
Yeah.
Let's close out. Thank you for tuning in to the Weights and Plates podcast. You can find me at weightsandplates.com or on Instagram at _Robert_Santana. If you are Metro Phoenix, we are just south of Sky Harbor Airport off between 32nd and 40th Street and Broadway. Come on by. We offer private, semi-private training and gym memberships. And we're also now on YouTube, youtube.com/@weights_and_plates. And Hari, where can people find you?
Guys, you can find me at Instagram. My account is at Hari Fafutis. English pronunciation probably at Harry Fafutis. And there's also my gym in Guadalajara. It's called Tabros. You can also find us at Instagram at Tabros Fuerza. And if you ever come down here, want to have some solid training at my gym, you are welcome.